Chris, the wife who seemed devoted and loving, was hiding a secret about her lover that ruined their world. She cheated on her husband, fulfilling her lover's every wish. But what happens when the deception is exposed and she is left alone, lost in her own lying games? This is a story of betrayal and consequences. James fell in love with his future wife as soon as he got a new job. He was 25 and Emily was 20. She was working part-time while studying at the university. The girl didn't take her colleague seriously for a long time. She refused him even an ordinary date. But later, she gave in and did not regret it. James turned out to be a wonderful man, with whom there was something to talk about. He was handsome and attracted the attention of the female colleagues. A year later, Emily found out she was pregnant, and later they had a beautiful baby girl whom her father adored. Neither of them noticed how 18 years flew by. Ever since Emily was a little girl, they had a friend, Becky, who had been friends since kindergarten. And they managed to carry this friendship through the years into adulthood. Becky had been divorced for a long time. She was raising her son Kali on her own. He had just recently returned from the army and decided to make up for lost time by attending university. James was used to his wife going out with a friend several times a week. Then they went to the gym together, then to the movies, then just sat at home and drank. When their relationship just started, still young James did not understand why his beloved did not devote all her free time to him. He resented Emily, quietly hated Vika, but over the years he got used to their relationship. Perhaps Emily joked with her husband, saying that he was just jealous that he had never had such friends and never would. James understood that, to some extent, this was true. Their daughter had left to study in another city right after high school. As her daughter grew older, Emily had more time for herself. She always looked good, and James contributed to that in every way. He did not spare any money on his beloved. Just when the child became an adult, Emily started going to the gym for dancing and doing yoga. She visited beauty salons and spas more often than any other woman in her circle. The investment paid off handsomely. For her 40th birthday, Emily looked very attractive. But it was this attractiveness that attracted the attention of Kali, Vika's son. Emily came to visit them from work earlier than her friend and was greeted by a young man. They were drinking tea and suddenly Kali said, "You are very beautiful," a woman, confused. It is one thing to hear such a thing from a husband or from men her own age, but another from a young man who knows a lot about youth and life. Youth and beauty were topics Emily was very pleased to discuss. She thanked the person, replying with a smile. She remembered when she was 14 years old. She liked him very much, confessing that he was her first conscious love. This revelation gave Emily goosebumps and made her feel uncomfortable, as though she had become an unwitting witness to someone else's secret. She chose not to speak with him again and could not look him in the eye if she saw him again. Emily was embarrassed to admit to herself that she constantly thought about the young man after that night. She even dreamed of him taking her in his strong hands and kissing her. Consequently, Emily visited her friend less often, carefully selecting times when Kali wasn't home, relieved that her friend didn't suspect anything, as she didn't want to cause any conflict. On a particular day, Emily encountered the young man, who, after ensuring his mother had stepped out onto the balcony for a smoke, asked Emily if everything was all right, questioning if she was avoiding him. They were standing so close that Emily caught her breath. She nervously responded, "No, you seem to think I just have a lot of work to do. I can't come to you so often anymore." Confused, she attempted to smile. The next moment, Emily's heart fluttered and her cheeks turned red. She couldn't resist as Kali kissed her. A week later, Kali phoned Emily, inviting her to visit him while his mother was away on a trip. Angered, Emily scolded him, hung up the phone, and spent a long time holding it, breathing heavily. She wondered if he truly believed she would abandon everything to meet him in his bed. That day, Emily left work early and stood in front of Kali's house an hour later, where he greeted her with a pleased expression. Their meetings became a regular occurrence. Emily experienced a wide range of emotions. She worried about her relationship with her friend, which would inevitably suffer if she discovered Emily's affair with Kali. She felt guilty for deceiving James, who innocently thought she was merely busy at work, when in reality she spent time in Kaylee's strong arms, passionately in love. Often, they didn't manage to meet, and Emily scheduled their dates during her lunch hour to avoid arousing James's suspicion. Kali's wife attempted to maintain a normal facade, while James began to notice his wife's glowing eyes and changing manners, admiring Emily without understanding the reasons for these changes. In a moment of intimacy, Kali confessed his love to his beloved. "Divorce your husband. Let's go somewhere together. I want to be with you." He was admiring Emily, and she saw it. "Well, yes, and your mother will kill us." The woman laughed, "And we won't tell her." After dialogues like that, Emily always wanted to break up with Kali, never to see him again or remember what happened between them. She and James had been together for almost 20 years, and she couldn't imagine life without her husband. But despite her feelings for her husband's lover, Emily loved him too and couldn't give him up. But their secret union could not exist happily ever after. Once again, when Emily ran away from work to fall into the arms of her lover, Vika caught them in bed. From what she saw, the woman felt ill, and her son had to hurriedly call his mother an ambulance. Shocked, Vika kept repeating the same thing. "How could you do this?" She looked at her friend with sad eyes while Emily cried and begged for forgiveness. Coley sat silently in the kitchen, trying not to show his face to the women. He heard his mother say that Emily had to tell James everything or she would, and the mistress cried and begged her not to. The cheater had to confess. She did not want James to hear about it from a third party, and pulling together the strength, told him everything. He at first didn't believe it, thinking his wife was playing a practical joke on him, but when he saw the tears in her eyes, he understood everything. They decided to save their marriage. Because they are family, they have a daughter, that after a difficult year full of scandals and resentments, they divorced. Emily's soul missed her beloved, and James could not even bring himself to go to the same bed with his wife. The daughter accepted their divorce, but the relationship between her mother and her peer was not. The woman was left hoping that after a while the girl would change her mind and resume communication with her mother. Emily transferred to a university in another city, and she and Emily moved away from their acquaintances and angry tongues. Each in the shadow of forbidden passions and hidden desires, fate gently wove her a formidable net, drawing her into the arms of a dark conspiracy. That the wife, surrounded by glittering illusions of her perfect marriage, suddenly plunged into a dangerous game of fate and began to cheat on her husband. But what happens when the curtain rises and the illusions dissipate, leaving her alone, broken and betrayed? In the following stunning tale of betrayal and experience, she will find the strength to rise up, pick up the pieces of her shattered life, and be reborn in all her greatness. The life in a quiet little village is always monotonous. There are no bright impressions. Everything seems to go on as if on a rolling basis. The villagers got used to each other a long time ago and have been pairing off since school. There is not much of a choice. They get married, have children, spend their old age, and then marry their children again, and everything goes in a circle. There is no news either. Is news either unless someone arranges it for himself, and the main event in my remote village was the sensational news that they will build a new factory. There was a lot of gossip talk. Few people believed in construction, but one summer evening trucks with building materials rumbled past. The summary rumbled, and a construction crew came. It was that day that changed my life forever. We were used to living in the middle of nowhere, in silence and complete peace. Fiction, my wife, with her emotional and hot-tempered nature, had reconciled herself to the fact that no bright impressions were forthcoming. I did everything a husband should do, earn money, and help in the household. In the village, I'm a reliable, strong, and hard-working man. She, like a cheerful dragonfly, was not very fond of work, but dreaming was her hobby. She dreamed of the city, of impressions, travel, and that I was ideal. Even at the beginning of our married life, Annie tried to diversify our life. She was having fun, but I was tired at work and could not reciprocate the mutual merriment. I was afraid to go into the city in order not to get involved in some interesting story, and also in order to save the family budget. So our family evenings were peaceful and quiet. However, on a quiet summer evening, the beginning of construction started, where Annie and the construction foreman Nikita met. It was Nikita who won her heart. I worked from morning till night, was tired, and didn't notice how my spouse was distancing herself. But realizing it herself, Annie started going out into the yard more often to do garden work. But that was just the reason. You see, in the construction crew, whose foreman was Nikita, was clearly visible from behind a loaf. In the daytime, Annie would put on a cheeky sundress and go out to the yard to sunbathe and look at Nikita. He couldn't help but notice it. The girl's passion could no longer sit inside. She needed to attract his attention, so she put on short shorts, made a mischievous ponytail on her head, took a hose and began to water the flowers. The effect was not long in coming. Nikita immediately walked over to the fence and a conversation ensued.
Has the construction noise bother you?
No, not at all. I do not pay attention to him.
She smiled and made it clear that she was interested in him. It was from that day that something broke in my wife. Deep sighs of regret burst from her chest. I did not understand what was wrong with her, When I asked her questions, she would answer that everything was fine. When I came home from work, I would automatically receive a kiss on the cheek and go to dinner. She understood that she was attracted to Nikita and she could not overcome this desire. A few days later, Nikita asked Annie to show him where the stores were. She offered to go with him by car, but of course, she was very afraid of the trip. She understood that it was only a pretext, because she saw in Nikita's eyes the same fire of passion that ignited in herself. But and I went. It's when she first drove outside the village, the foreman turned off the car, pulling into the shade of the trees. And there she was, already feeling his hot breath on her neck. And so shy and I became bold and passionate, falling into Nikita's arms, and so the 2 summer months passed. When I left for work, my wife would meet Nikita's gaze, and later they would drive together to the woods, where they would give themselves over to love. She couldn't think about anything else, and I began to notice her coldness and aloofness. Already lying in the arms of this foreman, and I wondered what to do about it now. How to tell me the truth. Nikita promised to take her to town. He described in every color how they would live together and get married. The summer flew by. Construction was coming to an end, and I was making plans to move to the city. She wanted to go somewhere where emotion and fun beckoned to her. And with Nikita by her side, it would be unspeakable happiness. The construction was finished. And Amy was waiting for a chance to confess to me. But Nikita stopped her. Sweetheart, I can't take you with me right away. I have some things to take care of, but I'll come and bet you. But how can I be here without you? Well, keep in touch. And he left. And I stopped sleeping at night. She didn't want to eat anything, didn't want to see anyone, and I saw that and felt that I simply disgusted her. A week went by, but Nikita still didn't call. And then I began to notice that my wife was throwing up in the morning. And soon I saw a test in a garbage bag with 2 lines on it. I didn't want to believe it, but Amy constantly cried and didn't eat anything. Immediately, I decided to find out once and for all. And my wife confessed, told me in all the colors of his adultery, and even began to point out my shortcomings. I was furious and slapped her in the face. It became clear that the child is not mine, but still, I did not want to believe in betrayal. But I was possessed by rage, and I grabbed my wife and threw her out into the courtyard, threw a few things into her suitcase, followed her and closed the door. The grief-stricken girl walked down the street, and the fellow villagers looked after her. Many guessed about the young lady's violent shenanigans, but no one offered to help. Waiting for the bus, Annie went into town. She did not know Nikita's address, but she knew the name of a construction firm. She arrived in the city late at night and had to spend the night at the train station. In the morning, and I went in search of her beloved. She found the firm fairly quickly. Nikita was there. He was surprised to see her, took her outside and led her away from the building. He was very angry.
Why did you come here?
I came to see you. You promised that we would.
Annie, I'm married. I have a family and a life of my own. With you, I was only having fun.
But, we're having a baby.
I don't want it. And, I think that I don't want it.
Have an abortion or tell your husband it's his baby. And so he kicked me out. He knows everything. I don't want to know anything. Bye. If you interfere in my family or seek a meeting, I'll go to the police. Nikita left and Annie sat down on the bench and sobbed. She still had no idea what to do. She didn't know anyone in town. and no one wanted her, and in the village life had come to a standstill. Money was enough for communal room. The next day, the girl went in search of a job. She found a job at a hairdresser's as a cleaner. She worked during the day, but at night she wept on her pillow and thought of her bitter fate. But Teen Annie always wanted to get out into the city, but not under these circumstances and not at this price. I received a letter from my ex-wife in which she told me everything, apologized, and asked me not to file for divorce. But my decision was unchanged. After the divorce, she never contacted me again. And how is her life now? I do not know. Yes, and not interested.